Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your consciousness transformation ascension guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, and also co-host of another podcast called Ascended World, coming to you today, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. And there's so much to talk about. So we're going to start today with, what's going on. We've talked about this, and everybody's talking about this. I'm just pulling up my page here so I can see. Everybody's talking about it. In fact, it's funny because there's a part of me that's like, oh, I'm sort of done talking about this. But no, actually, we're just in the beginning of it. Good morning, Gloria. So because things are unfolding, we're evolving very quickly. We have now created. So here's the funny part. Like many of us who do, good morning, Anne. There are many of us who do like any kind of consciousness work, right? And we do energy healing work, we do psychic work, all kinds of stuff, channeling, blah, blah, blah. It's all the same stuff. It's really all the same stuff, just different packaging. So over the years, many of us have seen catalytic events, and I don't call them cataclysmic, I call them catalytic in the world to help us shift, because we've known and felt this, and we all came here to be a part of the way this momentum has started so that we can really accelerate our shifting. So many of us along the way have had visions and understandings of there being what I call catalytic events, major catalytic events. And some call them cataclysmic events, but that sort of comes from the ego, because cataclysmic is like, devastating and whatever. Where catalytic events are events that are so big we can't do anything but change, right? So many of us doing this kind of active conscious work for years have been waiting, because we know it's coming. We've been working at collective levels, at higher consciousness levels. We've been connecting together etherically, energetically, and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much, if we're here, no matter who you are, we're here to help this shift in whatever way, shape, or form. So we've seen the catalytic events, and see the catalytic events. We've been waiting, and we're like, okay, so there were all these other timelines that collapsed into this one. I'm going to be a little bit woo-woo today, probably, so just letting you know. All these timelines that collapsed into this one, and they needed to have their catalytic events to collapse into this one, and so they did, which is part of why many of us saw certain things. And then there are other things that we've seen that have sort of sat there on the spiritual shelf, what I call sitting on the spiritual shelf. So, but there have been things that have just never connected before, but that I've just sort of let sit there. And I don't really talk about them publicly, because the way we see the same experience is going to be individual to the filter of our own reality. So, although many do out there and talk about it. And I mean, I talk about it one-on-one with those who understand where I'm coming from and know that that's for them to like ask their truth about and all that kind of stuff. I don't talk about it a lot because it causes fear in those who aren't ready to transcend the ego, and they're just still on that journey of remembering how to do that, right? So we've seen these catalytic events, and many of us have felt for several years that we've been in between gears, like on a stick shift. I think I talked about that last week. And so we've finally like gone into gear in a way that, we couldn't have really fathomed in our minds. And because the mind is so built by the ego and separation and just knowing by its own boxes and its own context, that's what it makes these decisions on. But our higher consciousness has known this is coming. So we've been preparing for it. And part of the preparation has been going within, going through the lessons of remembering how to listen to our own guidance, our own higher voice, to hear it from the wholeness versus from different voices of the separation. And so now we're in this space of a huge catalytic event across the world. And so what do we do with that, right? Good morning, Nikki. Good to see you, as always. And so many of us, now we're out here and we're like, wow, look at how fast that came on. And it's not even close to over. In fact, this is just the beginning of changes being implemented and created, and things that are tumbling and crumbling I've talked about this multiple times. People talk about the Tower card and the Tarot deck. That's really what we've been going through for a while, and now it's just really crumbling. And it's not anything to fear. The unfortunate part is the ego fears because, as Marie Curie says, we fear what we don't understand. And if we are not in that practice and that habit of going within and listening to our own guidance over everything else, then we will be limited because we will stop and limit ourselves through fear, and avoid certain things and repress certain things and not allow the perception, and then give it more power and allow it to create itself in a way of separation versus in a way of wholeness. So this sounds like really obtuse in many ways, but it's not. It's very specific to what we're going through, and what I've been guided to talk about. So this is the thing. If we spend all these hours and in this time's continuum talking about different things, because there's so many understandings coming together, like so many dots that are connecting. Yes, there's a lot. It's just incredible. However, if we spend all our time talking about it and we don't spend enough time going inside and seeing it for ourselves, like if we give our power away and let everybody else tell us about it, then we only see it through their eyes and through their own filter, right? So when we go inside, it's to check check with our own truth. Is that my truth, right? B, also going inside and saying, okay, so what is there for me to see? And not what should I see? Always be careful of that. And I've talked about that many times. Should, must, have to, can't. That's all ego words, right? So when you say, what is there for me to see? What is there for me to do? What is there for me to understand? Then you go into a meditative state, whether it's energy healing or whatever, to get that clarity, right? And that's really the importance of going inside, right? So in that, right now, there's a whole ton of chatter going on. So you got the chatter going on with the fear, right, around the virus and all that kind of stuff. You've got the chatter going on about all this amazing opportunity that we have from a spiritual level of transcending the fear, which is great because it's a reminder to sort of drown out the fear-based chatter. And then the next step, right? The thing is for us to not stop there. The next step is for us to step into, now I turn into myself and I ask, what is there for me to do? What is there for me to be? And what is there for me to understand consciously right now? Because I understand it all at the higher level of consciousness. So it's like, okay, so allow myself to be this open, loving being, right, in presence and love. And from that, what is there for me to do? What is there? And we're going to start getting some pretty interesting answers. Well, we already are. However, it's when we only start getting really the answers when we get out of the chatter. First, we get out of the chatter of the fear, and then we get out of the chatter of even the discussion, right? And it's funny because I feel like I need to go and just clam up for like a week because I've been out here a lot and I've been doing a lot of talking, but that's what guidance has been to do, right? So it was sort of, I think it's phases that we're going through, right? So the phases is, okay, get over the fear, right? Help others get over the fear, transcend the fear, then get to the place of understanding what the bigger picture is, and let them go and listen to their own guidance. And it sort of like helps us to shift, right? So that's why I think all this chatter about what's going on and the spiritual stuff, which is great because it does actually start to drown out the fear-based stuff, which is big step one, right? So next is the real fun. The next part is the real fun of going inside and saying, okay, so what is there for me to do or be or understand? Because like I've just noticed this week when I do take that time to go in, because there's been a lot of, like I've been out here a lot, to listen, and it's like, wow, there's some pretty amazing things and opportunities for us to do. This is what our calling is. This is why we're here. And it's, everyone's like, oh, well, focus on all this healing, focus on all this, whatever, to focus on, focus on healing the virus. And it's like, really, it's time for us to set our sights even higher. Because when we actually work at the collective levels, which is what I do most of the time, well, all the time, pretty much that's my commitment, right, in wholeness. And it's what I talk about on Mondays on my Gavin Yoni. When we work at things at the collective, then it trickles down and it affects everything in a big way, right? So if we're guided to go up there and say, okay, well, what we did a couple weeks, I don't know, like a week and a half ago was we got rid of all the doors, right? We talked about that Monday. You can go look at that on a Sunday World. Got rid of all the doors between dimensions. And that wasn't just us, that was others, right? So we're at this very high level of consciousness. Getting rid of all the doors. We're getting rid of all that separation so that we can now freely flow through and play. The word that comes to me is play. And be able to bring in and manifest the next version of what we have decided to create here, right? So it's so important for us to come into that place of understanding and listening within over everything else. It is so easy with all the chatter going on now to, yeah, okay, so we are changing our radar to look at all the chatter from the spiritual stuff versus all the chatter from the fear-based stuff. That's great. Thing is, like I said, not to get stuck there and sit there and go spend all your time and all your days like, oh, listening to this and watching this and reading this. Of course, I say that and I have all these podcasts and everything else out there, but don't spend your whole day doing that because there's so much out there. The thing is, okay, get a taste of it. Set yourself to be guided to have what it is that's going to be relevant to you to come in front of you on a regular basis. And then always, regardless of what time, set aside a certain amount of time to do it because you can get lost in it, in anything like that. And then say, okay, and I'm going to also set aside that time to go within. And I'm going to listen to what's there from my higher consciousness. And I'm going to allow all possibility because now it's time for us to truly let go of the mind trying to control what we see and what we filter in, how we understand things, to say I can create without context. I can create beyond context. I can understand beyond context and beyond words. And so what's becoming more and more important is the understanding of energy, as we all are, right? The understanding of quantum physics and, frequency. Couldn't think of the word for a moment. Because frequency and energy, pretty much the same thing. It's the way the whole multiverse, as we know this multiverse to be constructed. And so it gives us a basis of understanding when we start. Yeah, Nikki says the beauty of meditation. Exactly. When we start connecting into that, right, and we realize it's all the same, right? That means we're all part of this, all, whatever you want to call it, universal consciousness, divine consciousness, God, spirit, source. We are all that in this embodiment, this part of us that's, embodied. And so we're all in it together because you and I are me, right? We're all me. And so what do we do from that? Well, we're so used to saying, I can't do that. I'm not worthy of doing that. I'm going to stop myself from doing that because I'll be judged. I won't be loved. I won't be valued. But because, society says that I will only be valued if I do this. And I see that out there. Oh, always make sure you do this above all else. Take care of other people above all else. And it's like, this is what got us into the predicament to begin with, okay? And it's not in an egoic way. It's saying, first above all else is to come into a place of remembrance and unconditional love of myself, to know that I am divine and infinite. And in that, I know that everybody around me is. And when I get to that place, so it's the brain tries to define it in a certain linear way. But the reality is when we come into this place of love, it's very easy to care and take care of others. Not even take care of others, to care for and love others, right? Because I honor you as much as I honor myself. And if I come to this place of unconditional love and know that I'm part of the divine and you are, of course I'm going to love you, right? And so of course I'm going to honor your journey and I'm going to not try to take it over, but I'm going to hold a space of love so that you can remember the most amazing, powerful part of you that you're embodied as you, so that you can do that. It's a very different way of us starting to exist. And when we can do that, then we can step back and say, so what is there for me to be? What is there for me to do? Not, I'm supposed to serve these other people. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do that, because that's all ego based, right? So it's time for us to get beyond all of that old pattern. That's not the phrase, the weird phrase that came into my mind. Pattern baldness. That's not it. But out of those old patterns, that was, I'm sure the words are escaping me right now. Because what happens is words are just tools that bring in, certain energies. So here's the thing, like yesterday. So we're doing these, if you haven't tuned in on Ascended World, we are doing right now 2 weeks of every day. We're doing daily meditations with different people who are leading. And yesterday, we had Jen Cunnings talking about, bringing in, she does light language stuff, right? And she's talking about frequency. And so I've been seeing that a long time about talking about frequency. And I don't think of it just as sound, because everything is frequency. Our bodies are frequency, like our cells vibrate, and that's what creates them, right? So yeah, when you say supposed to, sounds like shoulds. Good morning, Laurel. And so it's like, okay, so when we bring it, so the thing is, we hold a certain frequency. So let's sort of go right into quantum physics, right? So we hold a certain frequency that creates our reality, our physical body, our physical being, our physical consciousness, our whole surroundings, our environment, this desk, this microphone, our connection, all this stuff is all frequency. And so we're in this habit of bringing frequencies in a certain way to create, right? And this habit that we don't even think about, because it's what we have done so much. And so we're used to creating with our hands, with our minds, into our hands, right? Bringing things into manifestation. So now, there's a lot of awareness, and I've been talking about this for a long time, in teaching Trinity Energy Progression, is getting out of our minds to allow our divine self to come through. And one of the things that help us is truly focusing on things that allow us to quiet that and allow it to come through non-verbal stuff, right? Because we're very used to people chanting or saying things, or putting certain, listening to certain words and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. And that's absolutely fine. In fact, because we hold different vibrations now, different frequencies ourselves, what we say does come through in a different vibration. So we do create in a different vibration than we used to, which is great. And the thing to also remember is everything that we bring here is a vibration, a manifestation of frequency, as it can integrate into this reality. So when we talk about that, we talk about bringing things in a much higher, different frequency than we have had before for a long time, for a very long time, for eons. That's what I'm hearing. I keep on sort of hearing this laugh of I try to put it on a timeline, you really can't. So when we so we're going to be guided. So it's so important for us to be in that centered, calm, open, allowing place. Because when we get guided to do and be and whatever certain things, we might not even understand what that means consciously in the ego mind. But we will, if we can trust and we're open and know that we are that divine self, right? That we know that we're the embodiment of the divine consciousness in our own symphonic note, so to speak. And say, okay, I love myself unconditionally, and I know that I am worthy and able to do this, and I am infinitely magical and able. And if I'm guided to do something that I see and understand it, to know it to be brought in here, then I'm going to allow that to happen. I'm going to leave my heart open to allow all possibility. And that is what there is for us to step up and do, to allow. Because as we do that, so that's playing. I call it playing, because we're going to be guided. There's going to be so many flavors of ice cream coming in now. We already have a bunch of flavors of ice cream, but man, oh man, it's accelerating. And the reason for that is not necessarily the need to have everybody learn it. It is for us to embody it, to embody our note. And when we finally, so it's yeah, okay, we learn it. We might be guided to listen to and and meet this person and know this other person and have this conversation or see this or experience that. And then it's for us to take whatever, like what I always set myself to do, and whatever I choose to do, whatever my guidance pushes me to do, right? Or suggests, says there is for me to do. I always set myself to say, well, I am going to get exactly the pieces and golden nuggets from this that are to serve me in my own embodiment of divine fulfillment, right? And so, like, I could go to, go to see somebody do something, like some kind of event, whatever. And, like a lot of people could be like, oh, that was so amazing, whatever. And I'd be like, okay, that was all right. But there was one piece of that really felt like it clicked really well, and like maybe 5 minutes of like 2 hours, and it's fine, it's great, it's perfect, because this is what we're doing, is we're helping each other remember. So it's not for me to take on other people's stuff. It's for me to get to a place where I understand all the notes that are around me, the symphonic notes, right? And to take the nuggets of how I'm going to remember mine in doing that, because ultimately our goal is to find our own flavor of ice cream, to be able to embody that, because when we do that, that is the symphonic chord that will complete the evolution as we've seen it in this step. Okay, so it sort of ties all back around, and so it's so funny, because we always go, oh well, my purpose is to serve. All of our purpose is to serve. Our purpose is to serve as the full symphonic note in complete harmonization with all around us, right? That's what our purpose is. And so that includes playing and allowing, because things are so different, and they're going to be coming in so differently now. And it's already started. It's just really cool, crazy cool stuff, right? And I can't even explain to you many of the things that I've experienced, even in just the past several weeks. But I'm playing in different ways. I'm playing with certain abilities that are coming to surface, certain remembrances, certain guidances. So, when we took out the doors between dimensions, I was guided to start playing in between dimensions, and like saying, oh, well, since we use our hands in creation and our physical bodies, right? That's what we think about, what we do with, right? Why not use your hands to pull in different dimensions, assign each finger a different dimension, and it's like sort of like a chord to have something come in to allow yourself to manifest whatever that is. That is so magical, right? Now, if you've ever watched the show The Magicians, they do that with their hands all the time. You have the OA, you have Doctor Strange, like you have a lot of things like that. And it's not that you have to use those things, but it's to help us remember how to access those things. And what we've created is, in the act of doing here, helps to bring and manifest things in. So it is so important to be in that place of allowance, right? And in that place of centeredness and wholeness, so that we can allow this really magical, fun, cool stuff to come in. Because like I said, it's just, and we've really come to a place where there's so much coming in that's beyond words. So the next step is getting beyond words and trusting beyond words, that we have come to trust so much about verbal communication that we have, and it's funny because, well, look at this right now, we're being pushed so much to get online here on the internet and do like most of our jobs and our interaction on the internet with what's going on with the virus. And the key is, okay, so first we're drowning out all the chatter from the ego and the fear-based stuff, right? That's great. Next is to turn inside and to step away, to say, you know what? I don't need that to connect me, because I am already connected. I am seamlessly connected with those who I have a harmonic, resonance with. and we connect, and like we already know what's going on. Like we don't even have to talk all the time. We can, like, there are many people I know who we don't talk for months, weeks, months, even years, and then we come back, and of course we are totally on the same page. That is seamless wholeness connection. And that's not the need to, I have to talk to this person, I have to be this person, I have to listen to this, I have to write this, I have to say this, because more and more we are tapping into frequency that has no words. Words are a frequency, they bring a frequency in. And we're going to get more new words and sounds probably that we're going to start to vibrate out Even like I have over here behind me crystal bowls that are really high vibe. They're called alchemy crystal bowls, and they they change. They evolve too, which is crazy awesome. Because the more I play them, and as I evolve, I've noticed like two of them now play duotones. They play two tones at once sometimes, and sometimes their tone actually changes. That has to do with me and my interaction with them, but their vibration as well and their evolution. That's how everything, as we evolve vibrationally, everything around us is evolving vibrationally too. So what that means though is that the things that are not evolving vibrationally are falling away, and that's where all of this crumbling is happening. And that's a great thing, because it's time for us to let it go, to open us up, and that is what it's time for us to step up for. So it's so important to like, and it's giving us the opportunity to step back and look at every single part of our lives. Do I still want this? Do I still like prefer to have this in my life? Do I still enjoy this in my life? Does this resonate with me as something for me to continue with? And that's like jobs and relationships, situations where you live, what you're doing, how you're doing it. We're reassessing all of that. And that is a beautiful thing, and how we forced ourselves, because we weren't doing it ourselves. We weren't doing it at an individual level. And so now we're forcing ourselves into a place where we just have to do it. And so like, I look at it as a fabulous step, and we could have made this so much more catastrophic. We could have made it cataclysmic versus just catalytic. I mean, some people think it's, like the fear mongering is like, oh, this is like a catastrophe. And it could have been a whole lot worse. And we can make it a whole lot worse if we don't do this now. We will make it a whole lot worse. So let's choose to take the opportunity and a relatively light way of adjusting. And I know many people will say that that's crazy to say a light way of adjusting. But it is relative. It is relatively light, because there are many of us have seen many much more intense possibilities. So that's the important thing. So the thing is to say, okay, so how do I play in this? Like, what is the opportunity I'm getting? Like, what is the playing I can do? Going inside, like, what can I try? What can I play with? What can I, what am I guided to have interaction with, or where or how I'm guided to be? Because the very 3D world is very focused in one area right now. And we've created a space for ourselves so that we can really hit the ground running in this next gear that we've just finally shifted into. So that's great. Amazing and fun and exciting once we get past the fear. So that's I talk about that a lot. The key is not to get stuck in that 3D part, because when we vibrate, by the way, let's talk about vibration. Energy healing and vibration and quantum physics, all interconnected. And even all of this, when we vibrate at a certain place, in a certain vibration, then sickness doesn't even exist in our reality. And that's true. It's proven. There's just when we're aligned in wellness and wholeness, when we're humming along, we are healthy and vibrant and happy, right? It just doesn't happen. So then there's nothing to fear. And and what I keep on saying is, yeah, you can walk through a field of people with leprosy, or the bubonic plague or whatever, and not be affected by it. So you can choose that. And so many go, but what? Like, the ego doesn't trust, right? So the ego goes, but. And it's like, okay, so that's why it's important to go inside, to learn these tools, to be able to access that shifting within yourself without depending on like others outside of you to do it for you, right? Which is what I teach with Trinity Energy Progression. Just a little plug there. We have a Trinity 1 class that'll be coming up, and I'm going to be posting that soon. But, and it's an online, the Trinity 1, which is the self-mastery. That's the first part that's actually online. We're going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing that shortly. So, and I'm sure there's going to be other instructors doing the same thing, because that's the first step. Because when we get to self-mastery, that means I am transcendent to the limitations that I've created in the 3D, and now I can change that because I created my reality. I can change it. And when I take control of it and take full responsibility for it, then it's easy. And it's a journey of remembrance and trust. And the more you do it, the more you trust it. But then you're like, okay. And even when I do, like, first of all, the body is a message board. We've talked about this many times. And as a message board, that's why we get sick or have injuries or whatever. So the question is, what's the message for me? If I commit myself to listening to messages without having to have my body as a message board, which I have, I never get sick. And I had a lot of stuff that I used to have to deal with, like allergies of all kinds and weird sensitivities and all things like that. Don't have any of that anymore. And then I just listen. Is it for me to do this? Is it not for me to do this? Is it for me to do this instead? And so then it becomes a much easier path, and then it becomes fun, and then we can have fun together. Then we connect in the heart and stop connecting in the mind and the ego. And when we connect in the mind and ego, we keep ourselves so low in vibration, but when we connect in the heart, we just help boost each other higher, which is the beautiful thing. So yeah, we talk, we come together, we talk, we connect, but the thing is to remember, we're always connected, well, even when we're not talking. So we don't have to depend on that. We can always be that. Because once we know that we're connected and it's all whole, it's all one, we're never apart. So then we stop having that dependency all the time, which some of us are we're being forced to do because we're sort of separated physically. And so the first wave has been to get online, to have all this chatter, which, like I said, is great because it's drowning out the fear-based chatter. And then it's to step back and say, okay, now let me step away from this and connect and make sure I am true and trusting in my connection from here. So look at that this week. Take some time. Make sure you're not spending the whole day on the computer or on the TV or whatever. I don't even have the TV on in my house until like later on at night. And then I almost never watch live TV. Mostly it's Netflix or stuff like that. So step away, and I'm very choosy about what it is I watch, because I want it all to. I choose for it to all be of a certain feeling, a certain kind of vibration. So look at that with what you're doing right now, because we have a lot of time to look at stuff right now in general. Step back and say, okay, so how can I shift this? What is there for me to shift? What is there for me to try? We were talking about is like the pandemic hobbies, right? Like people are starting to do stuff that they love to do and they haven't had time to do otherwise. So let's do that. That's weird. This weird thing just sort of came over. Anyway, so let's do that. Let's see what is there for me to try, and even beyond the physical stuff. But what I notice is a lot of people are having are getting guidance to do things that are like artistic, musical, or painting or singing or musical instruments or writing, being creative in all different ways. So here's the funny thing: in the physical connection, the right side of our brain is what houses our our creativity, right? Our artistry and our intuition. So when we open ourselves up in our creativity, guess what happens? We also open ourselves up in our intuition and connection. So that's why I feel like a lot of people are being guided to, push to do things like that. So do that, whatever that is. It could be doodling, could be, scrapbooking, could be anything. Could be gardening. That's a creative thing too. So, and a very grounding, connecting thing to the earth and stuff, which I know many of us will be doing gardens this year, including myself. So look at that and say, what can I do? And then make sure you spend some time in this, doing some meditation time and really looking inside. And then seeing asking what is there for you to do or be, and to open your heart, to set your intention in creation, to have an open heart and allow all possibilities in the way in the manifestation of your creations. So that's it in a nutshell for this week. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off on this week's Living the Shift.